All right, let's build some buildings to block our view from our proposed building. So I'm going to go to Architecture and Component and Model in Place. And we use generic model. And I'm not concerned with what it's called. And we're going to do an extrusion. And we're going to use the rectangle tool. And I'm going to come across the road here. Imagine this is the perimeter, the very furthest edge that the building can be. So that's the property line. So I'll come up and kind of an imaginary across the street and make a rectangle. And I'll make sure that that extrusion is longer than 1 foot. Let's make it 100 foot to start. And I'll go ahead and complete that. All right, and so we have now a single extrusion. If we were to go to the view, just to give you an idea what we've got here. I don't know why it asked to finish the model again. Let's go to view and get a 3D view of it. There we have the building sitting. And so now we just have to build more of that context. So I'm going to grab that building and I'll copy it down. And I'll do this just a few times here. We could imagine that block going on. So let's say there's still that street gap. And we have a few more buildings in this direction. And that same street gap. And once again on this side. And let's look at it from a 3D view so we can kind of modulate our heights here. So let me go to grab the Modify tab and start pulling some of these up. And we'll change, I'm just trying to create variability here. And, obviously you can fast forward through this. Okay, so now we have some variable building heights. I'm going to go back to level 1. And now what we need to do is actually bring all of those buildings into Revit. And so I'm going to use the select model element to bring the property line in. We can use select model elements to bring in all of the generic models. So I selected the select model elements. I'm going to click on select. And now I can come over here and start selecting, except it doesn't seem to be active here, so I might have something holding me up here for a second. Okay, so select model element should work, but it doesn't seem to perform for me here. So I found select model elements by category and actually did the drop down here and selected generic elements. And this one seems to work. So if I hit select, and come over to Revit, hopefully. That one's still not working. It was just working a second ago. There we go. So now it's showing that plus sign, which is really important. So I'm going to keep clicking on these as they get highlighted. And then when I'm finished up, if you'll notice, it says finish. So I click finish, and then all those model elements are selected. So I'm sorry for that, if that misled you and caused you a little consternation, but that's our select multiple elements. And now that we have those in again, I can stretch this out full screen and we can continue on with bringing that geometry in. So just as we did before, we have elements, but they haven't been defined as anything that we can see with inside of Dynamo. And so I want to make that visualization possible now. And we're going to do that by using, instead of elements curve, elements geometry. So there's probably a selector elements dot geometry. Oops, not element, element. Excuse me. And this is the first one I think is the right one. So we put in an element and we get out a geometry. Or so let's see what that looks like. So now all of our elements are showing. We have a list of the buildings, but it's a list of list. So one of the things we might want to do, well, first of all, when I want to just deal with the tracking of our generative design, I need another data remember. So I'm going to copy that one up there and paste it. And this will, when it goes through the reiterations of generative design, it'll always remember that those buildings are there. It's just an important way that it packs the final file out. You know, one day they may upgrade this that it's not even needed for us to do that. And then I want to flatten that list because I have a list of lists. So I'm going to go, whoops, flatten. And let's plug that list in. And just once again, a technique you'll learn, but if, you know, we have a list of lists, so there's 2 levels deep. If we go over here, we have a list, but it's just a single depth of list. It's not a list of list. So now we have that simpler thing that we can now actually, what we want to do is actually join all of this geometry so it's treated as one. So it's called solid by union. And I probably have to solid dot, oops. And my big head's in the way, but there's by union. Because we have these multiple solids. And the last thing we want to do, or the thing we don't want to do, is have to calculate whether we have a view for each object. We want to take them in totality. So that's why we're going to connect them all together. I'm going to feed that into there. And now we have a single solid. And I'll turn off the list flatten. I'll turn off the preview of the data remember and the element geometry, just so we're back to this idea that those buildings are a solid single element, so to speak. Okay, so now we have our buildings. We can change our stories and our placement on the footprint. We have all of our context buildings that we need to look through. Now we need to go through the concept of how we're going to determine whether there is a view there or not, and we'll do that next.